The envelope sat on my desk for 3 minutes before I opened it. Certified mail, signature required, return address listed only as a P.O. box 2 towns over. The paper inside was quality stock, 20-pound weight, the kind used in legal offices. 6 pages. Photocopies of bank statements, text message screenshots, a lease agreement for an apartment I had never heard of. My son-in-law's name appeared on every page. At the bottom of the last sheet, someone had written in blue ink, "You were right to watch." I set the pages down and looked at my hands. They were steady. That surprised me. The letter had arrived on a Thursday. Sarah had called me paranoid exactly 9 days earlier. I work in corporate security. Pattern recognition, threat assessment, due diligence on partnerships and acquisitions. 26 years of watching people lie about credentials, skim funds, hide affairs, falsify reports. You learn the tells, the micro-expressions, the gaps in stories that should flow smooth. I don't bring this home. I've always kept my professional lens separate from family. But some patterns are too loud to ignore. My daughter married Colin 3 years ago. Small wedding, outdoor ceremony, simple vows. He worked in pharmaceutical sales, traveled twice a month, brought home decent money. Sarah taught 4th grade. They bought a townhouse 20 minutes from my place. Normal life, normal rhythms. I saw them most Sundays. Dinner, conversation, the occasional favor with a leaking faucet or a tax question. The unease started small. A phone call he took outside during dessert. The way his eyes flicked left when Sarah asked about a weekend trip. Little things that might mean nothing. I told myself I was seeing shadows. Then, the shadows gained weight. 4 months ago, I stopped by their place on a Tuesday afternoon. Sarah had asked me to drop off a box of old textbooks she wanted for her classroom. I knocked. No answer. Used the spare key she'd given me. The house was quiet. I set the box in the hallway and heard water running upstairs. Colin's voice, muffled through a door, speaking low and quick. I should have left. Instead, I stood still and listened. He wasn't on a work call. The tone was wrong, too intimate, too careful. He laughed once, a sound I'd never heard him make around Sarah. Then silence, then the sound of him moving. I left the box and walked out before he came downstairs. My heartbeat stayed elevated for an hour. I didn't tell Sarah. I had no proof, just instinct and a 30-second sound bite. But I started watching. He said he'd be in Boston on a Friday. I checked his social media, saw a tagged photo at a restaurant 60 miles south of where he claimed to be. When I mentioned it casually over Sunday dinner, he said the client had changed locations last minute. Smooth answer, no hesitation. But his jaw tightened for half a second. Sarah didn't notice. She was talking about a student's art project, smiling, happy. The next week, he mentioned a conference in Denver. I found the conference website, checked the attendee list. His company was listed, but his name wasn't on the roster. When I asked him about a keynote speaker, he described a session that didn't match the actual agenda. Small errors, the kind a liar makes when they build a structure on false ground. I pulled his LinkedIn. Recent activity showed endorsements from people at firms I'd never heard him mention. I ran 2 of the company names through basic searches. One didn't exist. The other was a shell, registered 8 months ago. No active business, no revenue. I felt the old professional current move through me, the clarity that comes when pieces start locking. Sarah called me on a Wednesday evening. Her voice was tight. "Dad, I need to ask you something." I waited. "Colin said you've been asking him strange questions about his trips, his work. He thinks you don't trust him." I kept my tone level. I asked normal questions. "He said you're tracking him, that you looked up his company. He feels like you're investigating him." Did he say why that would bother him? Silence on her end, then a sigh. "Dad, he's my husband. You need to let this go. I know you see threats everywhere because of your job, but this is my life. You're being paranoid." The word landed clean. Paranoid. I'd heard it before, from people who didn't want their patterns examined. "Okay," I said. "I'll step back. Thank you." She hung up before I could say anything else. I sat with the phone in my hand and felt the distance open between us. I'd pushed too far without enough proof. If I kept pressing, I'd lose her. If I stopped, I'd watch her stay tied to something wrong. I stopped asking questions. I didn't stop watching. I set up a simple system, nothing invasive, nothing illegal. I tracked his public social media activity, noted when his locations didn't match his claimed schedule. I ran his company registrations through public databases. I checked property records for any addresses tied to his name. It took time, patience, the kind of methodical work that separates suspicion from fact. 3 weeks after Sarah told me to back off, I found the apartment. A lease agreement filed with the county, renter's name listed as Collins, co-signed by someone named Michelle Brennan. The address was in a complex 30 miles west, near the highway. I drove past it one evening. Clean building, mid-range, the kind of place a person rents when they don't want to be noticed. I didn't knock. I didn't confront. I wrote down the address and kept building the file. Then the letter arrived. I read through the pages twice. The bank statements showed regular transfers to an account I didn't recognize. 500 here, 1,000 there, steady withdrawals over 6 months. The text screenshots were cropped but clear. Messages between Colin and someone saved in his phone as M. Plans to meet, references to keeping things quiet, one message that said, "She's asking questions. Again. I'll handle it." The lease agreement matched the one I'd found, but this copy included more detail. The co-signer's full name, her employment information, a note in the margin about splitting utilities. The last page was a photograph, printed on plain paper, slightly grainy. Colin and a woman standing outside the apartment building, close together, her hand on his arm. I set the pages in a folder and locked it in my desk. Then I sat back and thought about the blue ink message at the bottom. "You were right to watch." Someone else had been investigating. Someone with access to private records, text logs, financial data. Someone who knew I'd been asking questions and decided I deserved the truth. Or someone who wanted me to act on information they couldn't use themselves. I spent an hour considering the source. A private investigator would have delivered a formal report, not anonymous photocopies. A friend of Sarah's would have confronted Colin directly or told her. This was calculated, deliberate, timed to arrive after my daughter had shut me down. Whoever sent it wanted me in motion without exposing themselves. I didn't call Sarah, not yet. The information was solid, but it wasn't complete. I needed context, motive, a full picture before I handed her proof that would shatter her marriage. If I moved too fast, Colin would spin a defense, Sarah would choose him over evidence, and I'd lose both the fight and my daughter. I started with the co-signer, Michelle Brennan. A public record search gave me basics. 31 years old, worked as a medical liaison for a pharmaceutical company, the same industry as Colin. I checked her LinkedIn, found her listed at a firm that partnered with his on distributor contracts. They'd likely met through work. The relationship had grown from there. I called an old colleague, someone who owed me a favor and didn't ask unnecessary questions. I gave him Michelle's name and asked for employment verification, any public mentions, any red flags. He called back in 2 days. "She's clean," he said. "Good employee record, no debts, no criminal history. But here's the thing. She filed a change of address form 4 months ago. Moved out of the apartment you mentioned. New address is in the same complex, different unit. Solo lease. They split? Or rearranged. I can't tell you why, but the timing's interesting. She moved right after a compliance audit at her company. Nothing public, but internal. Could be unrelated." I thanked him and hung up. The timeline suggested tension, a shift in the arrangement. If Michelle had moved out, Colin might be managing 2 separate lives instead of one shared secret. That meant more exposure, more mistakes. I went back to the bank statements in the envelope. The transfers had continued through last month, regular as clockwork. If Michelle had left, someone else was receiving money. I noted the account numbers, ran them through a routing check. The receiving bank was local, a regional branch near the apartment complex. I couldn't access the account holder's name without a subpoena, but I could watch the pattern. I drove to the complex the next Saturday, parked 3 rows back, a clear sightline to the building entrance. I didn't know what I'd see, but motion draws truth. 2 hours in, Colin's car pulled into the lot. He parked, sat for a moment, checked his phone, then walked to a unit on the 2nd floor. He used a key. The door opened and he went inside. I waited. 30 minutes later, a woman came out. Not Michelle Brennan, younger, different build, dark hair pulled back. She walked to the parking lot, got into a sedan, and drove off. Colin stayed inside. I took photos, time-stamped clear images, his car, the unit number, the woman leaving. Then I left before he could spot me. The next day, I ran her plates through a contact at the DMV. Name came back as Jessica Hale, 26, address listed in a neighboring town. I searched her online, found sparse social media, a few tagged photos from company events, same pharmaceutical industry, same network, 3 women, or 2, with Michelle replaced by Jessica. Either way, Colin was managing relationships outside his marriage with a pattern that suggested practice and planning. He wasn't stumbling into affairs, he was running operations. I assembled everything into a clean dossier: photos, statements, lease records, timelines. I didn't include speculation, just facts with sources. The document ran 11 pages. I made 3 copies, kept 1 locked in my desk, put another in a safe deposit box, and prepared the 3rd for delivery. Before I acted, I needed 1 more piece: motive. Why the anonymous letter? Why now? I went back to the text screenshots. The cropping was professional, designed to show content without revealing the sender's device or interface. I noticed something in one message thread, a reference to the audit and keeping accounts separate. The same audit my colleague had mentioned. If Michelle worked compliance and had discovered financial irregularities, she might have access to information that could hurt both her and Colin. If she'd sent the letter, it was a controlled burn, exposing him without directly involving herself. Or it was someone at Colin's company, someone who knew about the arrangements and wanted leverage or distance. I called Sarah and asked if she'd have coffee, just the 2 of us. She agreed, wary but willing. We met at a place downtown, mid-morning, quiet corner booth. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered. She wrapped her hands around her cup and waited for me to speak. "I need to show you something," I said. I slid the folder across the table. "I didn't want to, but you need to see it." She opened the folder. I watched her face as she read. The color left her skin. Her breathing changed. She turned pages slowly, stopping at the photo of Colin and the woman. Her hands started shaking. "Where did you get this?" "Someone sent it to me, anonymously. I verified everything. It's real." She closed the folder and pushed it back. "You've been investigating him." "Yes." "Even after I told you to stop?" "Yes." She looked at me, and I saw something break behind her eyes. Not anger. Worse. The realization that everything she'd defended was smoke. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I needed proof. If I came to you with suspicions, you'd have chosen him. I had to wait until I had something you couldn't deny." She sat silent for a long time. Then she picked up the folder and stood. "I need to go. Sarah, I need to think." She left. I stayed in the booth and felt the weight of what I'd just done. I'd been right, but being right doesn't heal the wound. She didn't call for 3 days. When she did, her voice was flat. I confronted him. He admitted it, said it was a mistake, that it's over, that he wants to fix things. She paused. "He also said you've been harassing him, that you hired someone to follow him, that this is all about you not liking him." "That's not true." "I know, but he's trying to make it about you instead of him, and I don't know what to do." "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." I gave her space. 2 more days passed. Then she called again, this time with resolve. "I'm leaving him. I talked to a lawyer. I'm filing, but I need your help." "Anything. I need documentation for the divorce, financial records, evidence of infidelity. The lawyer said it matters for asset division. Can you get more?" I could. I did. I contacted my colleague again, asked for a deeper dive into Colin's finances. Took a week, but he found more. Undisclosed accounts, transfers that looked like payments to maintain silence, a second credit card under a business name that didn't match his employer. I compiled it, handed it to Sarah's lawyer, and watched the process unfold. Colin tried to fight, claimed the evidence was obtained illegally. The lawyer shut it down. Everything I'd gathered was from public records or voluntarily shared sources. Clean chain of custody. Admissible. The settlement came faster than expected. Colin didn't want a trial. too much exposure. He signed, took his share, and moved out. Sarah kept the house. I saw her a month after the papers were finalized. She looked different. Older maybe, but clearer. We had dinner at my place, just the two of us. "I should have listened to you," she said. "You loved him. That's not a mistake." I ignored the signs because I didn't want to see them. "Most people do," she looked at me. "Do you know who sent the letter?" "I have a theory, but I don't know for sure." "Does it matter?" I thought about that. "No, it doesn't." She nodded, and we let the question settle into silence. A few weeks later, I received another envelope. Same P.O. box, same certified mail. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one sentence. "Thank you for finishing what I couldn't start." I never found out who sent it. I stopped looking. Some mysteries don't need solving. What mattered was that my daughter was free, that the truth had arrived when it needed to, and that I'd been steady enough to use it well. I kept the letters in my desk, filed under closed cases. Every now and then, I pull them out and remember that patience and precision matter more than speed, that watching isn't paranoia when the threat is real, and that sometimes the people we protect don't know they need protecting until the danger has already passed. Sarah comes over most Sundays now. We cook, talk, sit in the quiet that comes after a storm. She's rebuilding. So am I. The distance that opened between us is closed, replaced by something stronger. Trust earned twice is trust that lasts. I still work in security. I still see patterns. But I've learned to wait for the full picture before I act, to gather every piece before I lay the truth on the table. Because once you speak it, you can't take it back. And the people you love deserve the whole story, not just the suspicion. The last time I saw Colin was in a parking lot downtown. He was getting into his car, and our eyes met for a second. He looked away first. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. He'd made his choices, and they'd cost him everything that mattered. I drove home, unlocked my door, and felt the stillness of a house that holds no secrets. It's a good feeling. The kind you earn by refusing to look away when the truth gets uncomfortable. The kind you keep by knowing when to wait, when to act, and when to let the silence do the talking.